We have made it to the Super Regional round of the 2022 NCAA Baseball Tournament, and we are down to our final 16 teams. And by the end of Super Regional weekend, we will know who the 8 teams will be that will be competing in Omaha in the greatest show on dirt. So without further ado, let's get to the Super Regional predictions. Starting things off with Notre Dame and Tennessee. Tennessee, the #1 national seed in this tournament. They have been the dominant team in college baseball all season long. While Notre Dame, I think, is a very underrated team, and I would not be surprised if they pull off the upset in this Super Regional. Notre Dame, they came close to making it to Omaha last year as they did lose in the Super Regionals to Mississippi State, who eventually went on to win the College World Series. I will say this, if Notre Dame pulls off the upset against Tennessee and advances to the College World Series, I think this is a team that has what it takes to make a deep run in Omaha. I just get NC State vibes out of this Notre Dame team this season with NC State last year, as we saw them go on a Cinderella run last year. And they possibly could have and maybe would have won the College World Series last year if their season didn't come to an abrupt end because of you know what. But I'm going to pick Tennessee to win this Super Regional. It's hard to pick against Tennessee right now, but I'm not convinced that they're going to completely wipe through everybody for the rest of the year. I think they will slip up 1 point, but I don't think it's here. I think Tennessee wins this, but it's going to take 3 games, I think. I think this Notre Dame team is going to push them to the edge. Moving on to Texas and East Carolina, the 8 and 9 national seeds going at it. And I am going to say this will go 3 games as well. This East Carolina team, a very underrated team, but Texas, I just think that this East Carolina team is going to be overpowered with Texas. We see this more often than not. When we see a team that isn't too familiar with college baseball success compared to a team that gets a lot more talent, usually that more talented team pulls off the win. I think this is going to be the case here. I'd say this is your typical David versus Goliath matchup in a Super Regional, but I think Texas, they get the win. Moving on to Louisville and Texas A&M. Texas A&M, the #5 national seed. Louisville, the #12 national seed. As Louisville, they got here off of some controversy. Whether or not you believe they got here off controversy or not, you can argue that it was controversial how they got here, but you can't take away what they did in the regional, as they are in the Super Regional. Texas A&M, they dominated the College Station Regional, but they did most of their work how we saw, for example, against Alabama in the SEC tournament. They struggled early on, but once the 6th inning hit, 7th inning, they just started getting runs on the board. And we saw that against Louisiana. They did well in the 1st inning, but until inning number 7, they struggled to get runs on the board. And exact thing for TCU. They may have had runners in scoring position in the 1st inning. In fact, they left the bases loaded, but they couldn't get a run on the board, and they struggled until the 6th, 7th inning. But I hope that A&M does realize that eventually you can't just rely on doing well in innings 6 through 9 or 7 through 9. If you want to not only make it to Omaha, but to win the College World Series, you've got to bring your A game innings 1 through 9. I mean, it's been working so far where they, dominate innings 6 through 9. But that's not how champions are built. Champions are built giving it their A game every single inning, every single at bat, every single moment. And I want A&M in the College World Series so bad. But every time I get my hopes up for an A&M program, no matter what sport it is, whether it's football or baseball or basketball, it just seems to be a letdown. So you know what? I'm going to try something else. I'm going to try a reverse jinx here. I'm going to pick Louisville to win the Super Regional, but if A&M wins it, I will gladly take this loss. Oklahoma and Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech, the number 4 national seed. They were just one of the 11 top 16 national seeds that survived regional weekend. While Oklahoma is a team that is hot. They won the Big 12 tournament. They won the Gainesville Regional, pulling off an upset against Florida. And I'm going to pick Oklahoma to pull off another upset. I think in 3 games, I think Oklahoma, they win this Super Regional and move on to Omaha. Next, UConn and Stanford. Stanford, the number 2 national seed, they survived with the skin of their teeth in this regional, as Texas State had them on the ropes. They had them down 3-1 in the bottom of the 9th inning, but Stanford, they ended up pulling it out in the bottom of the 9th with back-to-back home runs to begin it, and then they won with a walk-off base hit. And just when you thought Stanford was out, that bottom of the 9th inning, that gave them life, and I think they're going to absolutely just absolutely bulldoze UConn here, and they win in a 2-game sweep. Moving on to some teams that have familiarity with Omaha, Arkansas and North Carolina. Arkansas, I think, is a team just like Stanford, who was out for vengeance for last year. Stanford, they had their season come to an end in Omaha last year off a wild pitch against Vanderbilt in an elimination game. And Stanford, they got life, as I mentioned a moment ago, in the bottom of the 9th against Texas State. Now, what stuck out to me in the video I did last week about predicting the regional rounds and then, just filling out my original bracket, I got a comment from Bob M. There was a comment in the comment section. He basically described Arkansas as Jekyll and Hyde. If the good Arkansas showed up to the regionals last weekend, they were going to beat Oklahoma State and North Carolina. But if they didn't, it's time to get ready for football. The good Arkansas showed up last week as they beat Oklahoma State in the region to advance to the Super Regionals. So I am going to go with Arkansas. They're a team on a mission. Number 1 national seed last year. They had the best record in the entire country, but they lost in the Super Regionals to NC State, who went on to go on an unbelievable run in Omaha. Their season came to an abrupt end because of you-know-what. So I'm going with the Razorbacks. And if the Razorbacks do indeed advance to Omaha, I think that they're going to be the team that I think has the most support out of all the 8 teams, because their coach used to coach for Nebraska, and Nebraska sports fans, they tend to root for Nebraska homage. Ole Miss and Southern Miss. Southern Miss is looking to get to only their 2nd College World Series in program history. Their only appearance was in 2009. While Ole Miss, many believe that they probably shouldn't have been in the tournament. They probably could have picked NC State or Rutgers over Ole Miss, but Ole Miss was one of the 9 teams in the SEC conference to make the tournament. And no matter what sport it is, I see this all the time. When there's a team that a lot of the people don't agree with them being in, they eventually prove us wrong, and Ole Miss did that last week in the regional round. But I'm going to go with Southern Miss, because the recipe for a College World Series every year, maybe 1 or 2 Texas teams, you get a team that really the city of Omaha and maybe even Nebraska as a whole can rally around. You get the Cinderella team. I mean, we've had Cinderella teams in the past. Fresno State's been a Cinderella team in the past. Coastal Carolina was a Cinderella team. And I think this year, I think that Cinderella team is going to be Southern Miss. Even though they're an 11 national seed, I'd say they're still a Cinderella team. As they're not a team that has familiarity with Omaha. So I'm going to pick Southern Miss. I think their pitching will be a difference in this Super Regional. I got Southern Miss moving on to Omaha. We wrap things up with Auburn and Oregon State. Auburn absolutely ran through their regional round, while Oregon State, they had their struggles, but they survived and advanced, as it did take a game-winning walk in the bottom of the 10th to get past New Mexico State. And in the winner go-home game against Vanderbilt, they only won by a single run, which isn't bad considering Vanderbilt's recent history. In fact, if you look at the recent history between both these teams, they are two of the most recent College World Series champions. In fact, with Mississippi State, last year's champions, not making the tournament, they were the two recent champions in the field. And they got paired up against each other in the regionals. If Vanderbilt would have won that regional against Oregon State, pull off the upset, I would have picked Vanderbilt to move on to Omaha. Based off the experience of Vanderbilt alone in the postseason. And I'm going to pick Oregon State for this exact reason. I just think that they had their moment where they had to survive and advance early on in the regional. They had their close call. But if Oregon State gets Auburn on the ropes, can Auburn recover? I think Oregon State wins this in 3 games. It could take 2, but I just feel like, despite Auburn being an underdog here, I just feel like they have enough talent to at least force a 3rd game. And that will do it for my Super Regional predictions. Comment your predictions down below. Like, share, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, have a wonderful day or evening, whenever you happen to be tuning in. And thank you for listening.